Welcome to Patriots 4th and 2, the official podcast of PatsFans.com.
We are back on Patriots 4th and 2, the official podcast of PatsFans.com. I'm Russ Goldman. Along with me is Steve Balistrieri and Derek Havens. On today's show, we'll be sharing our thoughts on the Patriots trading Brandin Cooks and a fourth-round draft pick to the Rams for their first-round pick, which is 23rd overall, and a sixth-round pick. On top of that, we have other topics to discuss as well. I also want to mention that Patriots 4th and 2 is now on YouTube on the PatsFans.com channel. Please do check that out and subscribe to it. We're going to have some interesting things on that channel upcoming this season. We have much to get through, but before we start, I have an item to discuss with each of you. Derek, I'm going to start with you. Can we please stop the swearing, Derek, please?
Yeah, I'll try to go ahead and keep my mouth in check. We started the Patriots 4th and 2 swear jar this week, so I don't want to rack up a hefty tab like last week. But, man, do you remember when the Patriots couldn't trade Brandin Cooks, Russ? I forget. Was that a couple episodes we discussed that? I forget.
Touche, Derek, touche. Yes, I did say I didn't think so, and I believe Steve said as well. So that's very interesting that you bring that up. Listen, everyone makes mistakes, my friend. We all make mistakes. So you caught Steve and I.
In Los Angeles did. They threw a first rounder at him.
Guys, we're going to get all to this. Trust me, we are definitely going to get to all this. But no, it's interesting that you bring that up, Derek. You caught Steve and I in a mistake, which is interesting because listen, it happens. I do many Goldmans during a show. We know that. But I want to remind you that even you make a mistake. Derek, you said this before the Minnesota Vikings game about Cordell Patterson. This is what you said, Derek. Well, I'm not sure Revis can hang with Patterson. Do you remember that?
Oh, this is going back. This is going back when we thought Patterson could still be something. You know, this is like, what, 4 or 5 years ago? I mean, this is something else. It is,
Derek. It is, but even you make a mistake.
Well, to be fair, everybody makes mistakes. But I am certainly not above that, I'll tell you.
Absolutely. We all make mistakes, including myself. And Steve, my item for you involves the PatsFans.com message board. You're going to like this. There was a post on there, intervention for Russ Goldman. And I'm just going to read a part of it because I know you agree with this. And talks about me and talks about me listening to Felger and Maz. And here were some suggestions. On 4th and 2, you regularly bring up something stupid either Felger or Maz said that enraged you. 1, why are you falling into their trap and giving them an extra listener? 2, why are you letting idiots or more likely trolls control your mood even for a second? By the way, on your polls, did you ever think that half of your responders know what option would upset you the most and select that? That's a very interesting take there. Steve, I need an intervention, so thank you very much to Lorker 1965 for putting this on the PatsFans.com message board.
I saw that, and I didn't realize you had seen it because I forwarded it to you because that guy, I'm sending him a Christmas card. I'm going to have to find out on the board what his address is because he's getting a Christmas card from me because he's echoed what I've told you offline for the past 7 years.
Yep.
And speaking of that 2 to 6 show, I'm not going to call them chuckleheads anymore because that's an insult. I'm going to call them a new word. It's actually an old word.
Okay.
Ultra-crepidarians. And I want you to look it up.
I will.
Do you know what an ultra-crepidarian is?
No idea.
That's the trivia question today for all Pats fans, 4th and 2 listeners. Look up what an ultra-crepidarian is, and it fits that 2 to 6 show without a doubt. 2AT. And I'm going to start using that more and more.
Okay. Well, I'm going to look it up after the show, Steve. I have no clue. All right. Let's get into talking about the Brandin Cooks trade. I'm going to start us off, and then I'm going to go right to you, Steve. I want to know what your overall thoughts on the trade, and do you like it? My overall thoughts are, well, I'm going to go to you in a second. I'm just going to share what I think about this. I don't like it. I didn't like it when I saw it. I understand it, though, because I actually like the player. Obviously, they don't feel that he fits into their future needs, so they got rid of him. So I understand that, but I don't like the trade, Steve. Your thoughts?
Well, when I first heard they traded him, I wasn't a fan of it until I saw what they were getting for him.
Right.
And I'm sorry, as much as I like Cooks, I think he's a very good player. He had very good production in his first year, over 1,000 yards, and you don't see that for a guy in his first year in the Patriots system. But when you get a first round pick, number 23, that was more than what they paid for him.
I know.
So no, I don't have a problem with it. At first I did, because I thought they were going to let him go on the cheap, because I didn't think they would get more than a third for him, honestly.
The return's really good.
When I heard they got a first, I'm sorry, I like it.
Okay.
And we'll get more into that in
upcoming. Yes, we will. And you bring up a great point, Steve. The return happens to be very good, and that could be part of the reason why they made this. But I like the player. I saw the potential of his second season with the Patriots being able to grow within the offense, so that's why it took me back. I was wrong, as Derek pointed out. I didn't see them trading him, but they did. And the return happens to be very good. Derek, your opening thoughts on this, and do you like the trade?
I actually really like the trade. I understand that Cooks is a very good player, and I'm not going to go ahead and pretend like, okay, well, he's gone now, so I'm going to kick him out the door. It's not necessarily like that. I like Steve, I was shocked by the return. And look, we talked about this ad nauseum last year, and it was about Cooks and what he brings to the table, and there's no doubt he's a dynamic athlete and is incredibly fast and does a lot of things right. But anyone who said he was a disappointment last year, I don't think is being fair. But what I think that the three of us were all disappointed with Cooks was his inability to kind of play the slot and make all those contested catches. We talked about that. That was, to me, something that
I agree on that, Derek.
I was disappointed by.
I agree.
When Edelman went down, we thought that Cooks could. We already thought that Cooks was going to have a big role. We thought his role could blow up, and he really didn't have the ability to take over that role. And it wasn't that the skill level wasn't there, it wasn't that the consistency or rapport with Tom Brady was there. It was just that he just doesn't have those kind of skills and toughness, and I'm just not sure he's that kind of player. So even though I think that he's a really good player, if you look at the receiver market this year in free agency, I mean, it has blown up into just ridiculous proportions. Brandin Cooks is a better receiver than Sammy Watkins, and Sammy Watkins just got 3 years for $16 million a year. Brandin Cooks would absolutely see that kind of coin, and I think the Patriots started trying to negotiate with him. In fact, some reports came out today that the Patriots tried to negotiate with him this offseason, and apparently the price was a little too high, and they didn't view him as a number one receiver, so they tried to maximize his value. And that's, to me, a perfect way to do business. They saw him as a guy who was a very good player, but he wasn't a number one receiver, and they might have had good value for this year, but not going forward. And the one thing that I thought was really, really interesting is I want to give Mike Garafolo a lot of credit for tweeting this out, but the Patriots, they got Brandin Cooks in a fourth-round pick last year from New Orleans, and they gave up Cooks and a fourth-round pick this year to the Rams. So that kind of cancels out. And they gave up their 32 pick last year, but they're up to 23 this year. So they basically they basically traded a third-round pick in exchange for a sixth-round pick to rent Cooks for a year to move up as well. So, I mean, the way they manipulate the draft board and the chess pieces, it's very impressive, and I think that this was just smart business by the team.
Okay, and that's going to lead us to talk about why did they make this trade. And Steve, I'm going to go to you, and then I'll go right back to Derek. Derek brings up some good points about potentially trying to re-sign Cooks and maybe the price was too high. Do you think that's the reason why they made the trade? Was it to do with the deal being too good? Was it that they just didn't feel that this player was a number one receiver? Also, like Derek said, why do you think they made this trade?
Well, I think when you look at this, there's more than one reason, and number one was the money. Obviously, they would have liked to bring him back because, the one thing he did do is he was very good at stretching the field. He was outstanding at drawing penalty flags because he had 1,000 yards receiving, and I think he had like close to 400 yards or maybe more in drawing pass interference penalties. That's just as good as a reception. So, in that aspect, he was very good. So they were trying to bring him back. But, like Derek said, when Sammy Watkins is getting $16 million a year, Brandin Cooks is, if I'm Cooks' agent and I'm like, my player is a lot better than this guy. So he should be at least getting that. And that's why the talks broke down. But the other thing, and Derek mentioned this as well, he was never able to bring into that short yardage, move the sticks role. I mean, he was very good at stretching the field. I think we saw that all year. We saw it right at the beginning of minicamp last year. We saw that element that he brought to the table that they really haven't had. But when it comes to that short yardage stuff, without Julian Edelman there, they tried to utilize him in that role, and I thought he did a really poor job of it. And in fact, Ian Logue, our esteemed owner here at PatsFans.com, had a really good stat on 3rd and 5 or less last year. They went to Cooks 12 times and only completed 3.
Wow, that's eye-opening.
That's pretty telling.
Yes, it is.
And that shows. I mean, he that's not something he was good at.
Yeah.
And I think it's a mixture. They knew they weren't going to be able to re-sign him. And like Derek said, he wasn't a number one guy. And, he's not that guy. But the last thing I'll leave you with is this. And I saw last night where, the top 10 paid wide receivers are getting. And I'm looking at the list and I was like, how many of those guys have a Super Bowl ring? None of them.
Great point. It's a great point.
And, they're all shiny hood ornaments. And
Yep.
I'm stealing that from Kerry Byrne from Cold Hard Football Facts. But that's exactly what they are. Patriots have always won without that guy. And, all those guys getting this big money and everyone, let's bring in OBJ and blah, blah, blah. All of those guys that top, all of those guys,
Yep.
No Super Bowl rings.
That's very interesting there, Steve. Before I go over to Derek, I want to go right back to you because you were mentioning Julian Edelman. I'm just going to throw this out there. I don't think we saw all of the potential from Brandin Cooks. Do you think it would have been different if Edelman was healthy?
Oh, absolutely. Because, those short yardage plays, that's Edelman's bread and butter. That's where they go with Edelman. And it would have made Cooks, I think, that much more effective.
That's what I think.
Because, you got Edelman. Now when you need to move the sticks, you have Edelman, fulfilling that short yardage, move the sticks, those 3rd and 5. That's where Edelman is at his best. And with Cooks' speed, then, the opponent starts looking at Julian Edelman. Okay, Brady's going to throw to him. And then you pump fake it to Edelman and you throw it deep to Cooks and he should be wide open. But
Right.
I think that's sure. I think you can definitely make that argument. But at the same time, if they're not going to pay a guy $16 million if he's a one-trick pony.
It's a very interesting way to look at this. I'm glad that you brought that up. And Derek, I want to get your thoughts on all that Steve and I were just talking about. Obviously, your thoughts on why they made the trade. You've already made part of that argument, I believe. But also my contention here that I wanted to bring to the table. If Edelman is healthy, I think Cooks has a much different type of season. But again, it also shows, as Steve mentioned, that he's not your number one receiver because he can't take over unless maybe another player is there to take away some of the heat off of him and then he can shine. So he can't do it on his own. Would you agree with that?
I think for the most part that's correct. I think with Edelman's he's a very talented player, and he helps move the chains, and I think other defensive players and coordinators respect him, and I think with him on the field, Cooks could have had a couple more opportunities, but I don't necessarily say that Cooks had a down year. I think that, to me, it was all about, okay, kind of like what Steve's saying with the one-trick pony stuff.
Right.
You know, we saw him with the end arounds, and he could use his speed there. And we saw him a little bit on the side. We saw him on the sidelines make a couple of plays, and down the field he made a couple of plays. But how many times last year did Brady go deep to Cooks downfield, and it was just a second off, or the play was just not made just barely, or there was a penalty flag for pass interference? I mean, one of Cooks' best abilities was to get those big pass interference calls down the field. And hell, if the competition committee passed the rule that they were discussing about last week in Florida about 15-yard penalties for certain pass interference situations, he loses value on that too. Of course, that didn't pass, at least not this year. But to me, again, I don't want to bash Cooks too much because I'm not going to say that he's not a good player. He is a good player. And if you look at his production to start his career, it's absolutely off the charts.
It is.
And I really do think he's a good player, but he's not a number one receiver, and he shouldn't be paid like one. And I think the Patriots negotiated with him and saw that he's not going to negotiate for anything less than a number one contract. And you know what? Good for him. Go get your money, because now you're going to a team in L.A. that has a lot of talent and should be a Super Bowl contender in the NFC and has a young offensive-minded coach that should be able to use you. I mean, good for him. I mean, I think it's a win-win, honestly, for both sides. I would have liked Cooks to stay around if he could have if he was the player I thought he was going to be. He was a little disappointing in terms of what we talked about it, in terms of the inability to play the slot like I thought he was going to. And that, to me, justified the Patriots moving on. And to get the value they got back, I'm excited with the return.
Okay, excellent, Derek. All right, right back to you. Let's now put you in charge and also your thoughts on what the Patriots are going to do here. Who do you think the Patriots are targeting with the 23rd pick, and what would you do if you were in charge of that pick?
Well, so it puts them in a very intriguing position, and I wanted to share some thoughts on the draft as a whole, so this might be a good opportunity to do that.
Go ahead, Derek.
So if you look at the NFL draft, and we haven't really talked too much draft. I know we're going to do a lot of it next week. If you look at the top of the draft, really it's going to be a run on quarterback, and we can debate all day whether they're worth it or not. I think there's a lot of talent in the quarterback class, but I don't know how much gold compared to fool's gold there is, and that will be a discussion for a different day. But the best thing that could happen to some of these teams that are in the middle teens or the early 20s, now like the Patriots, are looking at, okay, well, how many teams jump up and overdraft, for quarterbacks? Because you could see 4 quarterbacks go in the top 5. Hell, you could see 6 quarterbacks go in the first round alone. And so what kind of talent does that push down? I think if you're looking at this draft, there's probably, outside of quarterbacks, there's probably 10 players that deserve to be really, really considered blue chip kind of prospects. And I'm not even sure there's that many. And after those 8 to 10, you're looking at a chunk of players who are all probably graded within the same, from maybe the middle of the first round to the middle of the second round. So what I think, Russ, personally, I think they could target a couple of different positions, but they could sit at 23 depending on how the board falls. I think it might be a game time decision. I think they're going to be talking to some teams in the mid-teens and maybe try to jump up. Don't forget, there's a Cowboys team and a Lions team that if you're looking for a defensive player, the Cowboys are looking for a defensive player and the Lions are looking for a defensive player, and the Lions have a lot of similar thinkers in that draft room with Matt Patricia and also Bob Quinn at GM. So you might have to leapfrog those guys if you're going to get somebody you want. Before, when you were at 31, you had to consider those teams. You also had to consider teams like the Titans and the Steelers. Well, now that you're at 23, you're in a little bit of a different position. I could see them very much maybe moving up from 23 to getting a player, potentially a linebacker like Rashaan Evans from Alabama. Okay. Maybe there's a left tackle they like. Maybe there's a defensive edge player they like. And with 31, I wouldn't be shocked if they move back. So it's kind of like maybe you move up a little bit at 23 just to move back a little bit at 31. And the reason I say 31, maybe you move back, is maybe there's a guy like Lamar Jackson who hasn't been drafted yet, and a team hasn't gotten their quarterback even though there's been a big run, or a guy like Mason Rudolph, who interestingly enough I think would be a good fit for the Patriots, but that's besides the point. Okay. Maybe there's a chance that they move back to let a team come up and you end up with a little more draft ammo in the middle of the round. So that to me is it's a very intriguing carousel of how that will work, and honestly I'm not sure it will be figured out until draft night.
Well, what would you do, Derek? What would you do with that pick?
So I kind of laid it out there. I would wait to see how the draft board falls a little bit that night, and I would probably move up into the middle teens and go get myself a linebacker edge player for the front seven. Go get yourself an impact player there, and then I would probably move back with 31 into like the mid 40s. Move back 5 or 6 picks. Maybe pick up a third rounder, whatever you just gave up to move up with that 23, rehaul that, move back a couple of slots, and then you're kind of picking. Then you have 3 second rounders. You didn't really lose anything. Plus you got an impact edge player. Then you can go ahead and get a guy, like a left tackle, a quarterback prospect, a running back, whatever you want to do with it.
Okay, very good there, Derek. Steve, over to you. What do you think the Patriots are going to do with that pick? And also, what would you do?
Well, I mean, like Derek said, what they're going to do is probably going to be very dependent on how the board plays out. I mean, I think there's always some surprises there. Some teams always kind of they get antsy and go for a reach early. We see that every year. I'm sure this year will be the same. What I would do is 2 of the guys that we've talked about on the show, a guy, that linebacker that would fit for the Patriots, but we thought would go at either 25 or 28 was Rashaan Evans and Vander Esch. Well, now, we've seen in the mocks, those guys are probably going to go between 25 and 28 with the Titans and the Steelers. If either of those guys is still on the board at 23, now you have your linebacker. Now, it all depends if the Patriots value either of those guys. I like Evans more than anybody. I mean, if he's still around, then that's the guy I target. And the funny thing is, and I know a lot of people are saying they're going to make a move for Lamar Jackson.
Yep. Now,
I think if Lamar Jackson's still there at 23, I don't see him not being there at 31. Because I think the run on quarterbacks will probably start to die at that point. So you could still get your linebacker, and he'd still be there at 31. I think, and that's if they're even targeting a guy like him. I would like to see them do something they did back in 2000, and that's double up on the edge.
Right.
And at linebacker, what they did with Hightower and Jones.
That was very good.
100%.
And if they do that, I think they're in tremendous shape.
Okay.
And I read a lot of people saying, well, they're going to target a wide receiver. Why the hell would heck?
I don't see that.
Why the heck would they do that? They have 8 wide receivers on the roster right now. With
not to mention the wide receiver class is weak at best. If you want a receiver, you could get one in the 2nd or 3rd round, no problem. This is not the draft.
I mean, they have 6 guys legitimately that could easily make the roster, and 2 guys on the practice squad that could easily step up. Targeting a wide receiver in the 1st round makes 0 sense.
No, I
don't see that at all. Totally. But I think, one of the issues with the defense, and we've talked about that, was especially the linebacker play. They need speed at linebacker. They could use some more help on the edge, even though they've addressed that with, Claiborne. I think I would like to see them double dip at 23 and 31 and get the help on the edge. And I think your quarterback will still be there in round 2.
Okay. Very good.
I mean, can we not rule out the fact? I mean, I don't think it's going to happen,
Sure.
and this is going to make Russ pissed. I can just tell. But let's not rule out the fact the Patriots could move up and take a quarterback in round 1. I mean,
Derek,
if
you
they're
haven't heard my take yet. You haven't heard what I have to say yet.
all right, well, let me just finish this quick thought.
Go ahead.
If somebody falls, I don't think it will happen, but if somebody does fall, let's say a guy like Josh Rosen, who I think's a total douche, but let's say he falls, or maybe Allen falls. I don't know. One of the quarterbacks fall into the early teens. If the Patriots really like him,
yep.
I just wonder if they pull the trigger. I don't think it will happen, and I think it's funny that some people write off like Lamar Jackson to the Patriots. At the end of round 1, like they would be surprised. I wouldn't necessarily be surprised. If they feel that confident in a guy and they want to get a guy, then go ahead and take the guy. But I just don't.
Mark, I'm there with you, by the way.
Rule out anything with Bill Belichick. I think it's a mistake. What's your take, Russ? I'm curious.
Okay. Well, first of all, I think that the Patriots potentially could be doing what Steve said, double dipping, and I wouldn't be against the double dip.
I hope so.
I see where Steve's going on that. I think that could be what's in their minds. But on the other hand, I think that they could be targeting a player and doing something that you just said, Derek. Maybe they like someone high up in the draft that's a quarterback, and they target a quarterback. If you're asking me what I want them to do, is I want them to stick at 23, and I want them to draft this player, and it happens to be Lamar Jackson. I'm all in now on Lamar Jackson. I'm going to read an excerpt from this article on Yahoo Sports from Charles Robinson.
You button-hooked me there, buddy. I did not expect that.
I have watched a great deal of Lamar Jackson. I'm obviously following Syracuse. I watched a good amount of ACC football. I thought in his first year as a freshman, he was an elite quarterback back then. I'm going to read this excerpt from this article. This cemented it for me about Lamar Jackson. This article is from Charles Robinson on Yahoo Sports. It is entitled, "Could Lamar Jackson be Tom Brady's heir apparent for the Patriots?" And this is just a part of it. And this, again, speaks to why I think they should draft Lamar Jackson. While Brady and Jackson might be on opposite ends of the athletic spectrum, they share something where it truly counts. Both run a tweaked version of the Earhart-Perkins offensive system. Former offensive coordinator Charlie Weiss introduced the system to the Patriots, and current coordinator Josh McDaniels was groomed inside it, all while the scheme was tailored to fit Brady over the years. Meanwhile, Jackson ran a version of the same pro-style system at Louisville under Bobby Petrino. That gives Jackson familiarity with the formation, personnel, verbiage, principles that have defined the New England offense for years. Having an understanding of how the Earhart-Perkins system works would be a significant bonus for rookies sharing a classroom with Brady, who was operating the scheme at an elite level. Derek, I'm all in on this player. I think this is the quarterback they should be targeting.
Oh, God. Okay, for one, we're not going to argue on it, because I don't think it's stupid to say that Lamar Jackson could be the guy. I mean, hey, if you really think that Josh McDaniels is the heir apparent, well, let's not rule out that it doesn't have to be a guy, who ran a pro offense, is a tall, strong quarterback, good arm. It doesn't have to be that kind of guy who looks like Tom Brady. If McDaniels is the heir apparent,
that's right.
Let's not forget McDaniels took Tim Tebow in round 1.
He did.
Likes multiple guys.
That's right.
So maybe
I'm going in a different area.
Like
I'm going against my whole Brady Garoppolo picture of what a Patriots quarterback should be. I've completely changed my mind on this.
Russ, you're going against everything I honestly thought you believed, and I couldn't be more shocked right now. But I'm trying to keep composed for the show, because I honestly did not expect that answer from you. But what I will say about Lamar Jackson is,
yes,
this would be a good place for him.
I totally believe it would be.
He is a phenomenal athlete. His rushing yards stacked up to the running backs that have come out, the top running backs that have come out of the last few years, he blows them away. There is no doubt he's a productive runner. He's got terrific athleticism.
His
and he's a
completion
better
numbers
passer
are low,
than a
though,
guy
Derek. That's the only thing that scares me about him. His completion numbers are not good.
Yeah, but so here's the thing. If you believe that Brady is going to play for like 2 more years or so, this would be a good place for Jackson in terms of learn some offense, learn the NFL game, sit behind Brady. You know there's not going to be a struggle or anything. You know, you're going to work on your mechanics, you're going to work on everything, and then in 2 years' time, you know, we'll see what happens. This would be a terrific place for him. And I wouldn't rule it out. And I think it's funny that people would rule him out because he doesn't
I wouldn't at all
fit what they do here. Well, who knows what they're going to do here once Brady goes.
Right.
You know, look, I have kind of pigeonholed a guy. I really liked Luke Falk at the beginning of the process from Washington State, and there was a lot of reasons why I liked him, but I have toned back on him for a reason that I won't bore you with, Russ. But you know, there's a guy like Mason Rudolph, to me, who I think would fit a lot of things the Patriots like. And we're kind of going to do an offensive preview of players probably the next show.
Yep.
But for me, what I like about Rudolph is he reminds me of what Bill Parcells really liked in quarterbacks, and I think there's a connection there with he's a big, strong quarterback. He's got a very good arm. He was a 3-year starter, pro-style offense. You know, like there's a lot of things there where Rudolph could make some sense. And maybe the Patriots take him at the end of round 1 or the early round 2, and, you know, maybe they do something like that. I don't know. But let's not rule out anything. And Russ, I couldn't be more button-hooked by your take there. So thank you for the
You're
the
welcome,
enjoyment.
Derek. And I'm going to
Can I add one thing on your take, Russ?
Yes.
Oh, please.
Yeah, I was just about to go to you, Steve, but before
Okay.
I do,
Because,
I want to add a little fuel to Derek's fire here because I told Steve this off air. I think you know what I'm going to say, Steve. And my theory is, Derek, that the Patriots won't draft one quarterback, that they're going to draft 2. And one will be in the late rounds, and it could be someone like Kyle Lauletta, which is different than
Kyle Lauletta will probably go earlier, you know.
Okay.
But I think Lauletta's another guy that I have, Lauletta's another guy that I have kind of as someone who Patriots keep an eye on. I kind of got annoyed with Lauletta, but nothing to do with him itself. It was only to do with the media coverage here,
right.
You know. And I don't normally get annoyed with it, but it's just so funny. Like, it was funny when we mentioned him first because it was like, oh, played lacrosse, dad went to Navy, oh, he's a shoo-in. And then it was just like, it was such an overblown thing. It's okay, there are other things that they look for besides those quirky, you know, connections. I got it. Okay, we got it. So maybe Lauletta is a possibility, you know, and you know, I don't think it's stupid to double dip. I mean, sometimes
the Washington Redskins did it.
What happens? I think the Browns should draft only quarterbacks until they find the right one. But, you know, what are you going to do?
It's a bad idea. Derek, sorry, I have to go to Steve. I apologize, Steve. I just had to get that double dip in there because I wanted Derek to hear that. Your thoughts on everything that I've shared here?
Well, the one thing about Jackson that we mentioned a while ago was the fact that they used the Aaron Perkins system, which is the Patriots. And if the terminology is even close to the same thing that the Patriots use, then the learning curve for him it would be like sharply increased for him. It would help him immensely. And, you know, I think some of the problems he has, like his footwork, and he has kind of sloppy footwork at times. Right. That's something he can work on in the meantime and get it down. I think it would be really beneficial for him. You know, the funny thing is because he's so athletic that people want to mention Mike Vick. And, you know, it's, he's a black quarterback who's athletic. He can run like the Dickens, and he has a cannon for an arm. But the guy he reminds me of, and Derek might not remember this guy, but he reminds me much more of Fran Tarkenton than he does.
That's a great comparison.
Mike Vick.
That's a wonderful comparison.
Fran Tarkenton wasn't the biggest guy, you know, and when he came out, he was small, but, you know, he was able to scramble around. And when I look at Jackson, I see more Fran Tarkenton than I do Mike Vick. I think his ceiling
I
is
see
much
that too,
higher.
Steve. It's a very good comparison. And Derek, you probably didn't watch Fran Tarkenton, but he was an elusive quarterback. The one good thing, Steve, going back to you, that Jackson has going for him that Tarkenton didn't is his height. He's 6'3".
Right. Tarkenton was only, I think, 6 foot or 6'1".
Yeah.
You
So
know, but
he has a little bit more height. But what's interesting about him is a word that has been used among quarterbacks not with the Patriots because Tom Brady doesn't have this ability except when he's in the pocket. He can move within the pocket, but I would say that Jackson has a good amount of escapability with him. And that's what makes him a little bit different. It might make him, Derek, a good fit for Josh McDaniels. You go back to the Tebow thing. That might be a part of the thinking here. I don't know if McDaniels is the next guy. I think he might be. But I think Jackson would be a good fit for McDaniels. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I do think he would be a good fit. I mean, I already kind of shared my thoughts on that connection. I think that if you are looking at it as McDaniels is in charge, I think he has shown in his limited time that he kind of favors mobile quarterbacks, and maybe he would do something like that. I just don't think it's smart to just say they would never take someone like that. So
Right.
I don't know. I think Jackson is certainly someone to keep.
I rate him
mind,
very highly, Derek. And
we'll
you know,
we'll talk more about Jackson on the show next week.
Okay.
I feel like there still could. I'm still totally shocked by your take on this, but you know what? It's okay. You know, I enjoy the surprise. You never
very
seem
good.
to amaze.
All right. Before we move on from all this, Steve, I want to get your thoughts on what I brought to the table. I was looking at the situation with the Redskins years ago in 2012 when they drafted RG3 and also Kirk Cousins, two completely different types of quarterbacks. Could the Patriots do the same thing?
sure, why not? You know they like to bring in developmental guys, and we see that almost every year. They bring in a guy, and it takes some of the heat off of. And now they have two older quarterbacks on the
Right.
roster with Brady and Brian Hoyer. So yeah, I mean they like to bring in these guys to see what they can do, and if they show some promise, then they stash them on the practice squad for a
Right.
year, and then see what happens in year two. But they do this all the time, and I wouldn't be shocked to see them now. When you say later rounds, I'm thinking like round 6 or 7.
Right.
Correct?
That's what I'm thinking. That's
Yeah.
what I'm thinking.
Okay,
Steve.
yeah. No, I wouldn't, and I wouldn't be against that either. Again, it's just something you're looking at the future, and maybe you're looking at the backup quarterback for the guy you take early, because
Right.
Hoyer isn't.
Exactly.
I mean, he's not going to be around much longer either.
Exactly. But my point in all this, and again, it's just my theory that they might want to look at a different type of quarterback, different style, whereas I love what Jackson brings to the table. He has a different skill set than, say, someone like Kyle Aletta, who has that quick release and is more in the Garoppolo Brady mold. And I think that if you have two different types of quarterbacks, that gives you options, and you try to find the best one that fits your long-term plan. And but to your point, Steve, also drafting two quarterbacks, then you have your backup, your future backup. So that's a good idea as well. So again,
Don't rule out Johnny Manziel.
let's not talk about him right now, Derek. Don't get me started on that guy.
I'm telling you right now, I listened to the Ringer podcast with Mike Lombardi.
Yeah.
And he brought up a couple of really interesting points about Manziel. And we didn't talk about this in our discussion last week, but
Right.
I didn't know that Manziel came to visit with the team when he came out from Texas A&M. I thought that was surprising because, man, that was really, really under the radar. Not to mention, there was some interest rumored there, but something that has been speculated is that, with all the action, teams talking about to him, I think two things. One, I think that they met with him and they were interested, and I think that there's continued interest there. I also wouldn't be surprised if they gave him a drug test and they're going to drug test him again in 30 days, maybe after the draft. If they don't get a quarterback that they like in the draft because someone else takes him or whatever,
Yep.
I think Manziel will be the play a couple days after the draft.
Oh, that's an interesting theory by you, Derek. I am not a fan of Johnny Manziel. I understand why so many people are, and I'm all about second chances.
I think it's right or wrong. I'm just saying I wouldn't be shocked by it.
Okay, fair enough. All right, guys, let's get into the Patriots 4th-and-2 roundtable. And Derek, you brought this to my attention that we should lead with this, but of course we have the Brandin Cooks trade, so this will now be our lead in the Patriots 4th-and-2 roundtable. And I'll go to you. Let's reassess the Patriots' needs after free agency began and trades and everything that's happened. Name your top 3 positional needs heading into the draft right now.
Well, my top need for the draft, going into the draft right now, is a linebacker. I think the Patriots need to add linebacker help. Look, I love Donta Hightower. I think he's a phenomenal player. But let's be honest, and we said this even before he was resigned, and we knew this going in, and I don't care. I think he's a good player. I don't care if he misses a couple games a year, but last year was unfortunate. And when he went out, man, you were really, really hurting for players. And there were guys that shouldn't have been getting the playing time they were. I think that, Kyle Van Noy is a good player, but he's not Batman, he's Robin. In fact, he might not even be Robin. He might be Alfred, but he's a good player. I don't mind having him there. He just can't be the star of the show. And there's a guy like Marquise Flowers who the Patriots brought back on a short-term deal this offseason, and he had some great special teams ability, and he has some athleticism that he can bring to the front seven, but he is a role player. He is not an every down player. So they need to develop somebody, and I think linebacker is a good place to start. I also would go ahead and say that I would throw another edge player in there. I know they added Claiborne, and they have Flowers, and they have Wise, and they have Derek Rivers, who's kind of an unknown. I think that they still could use another pass rusher. They need to dive. If they're going to go with the double dip front seven thing, this would be another great year to do it. I mean, They could use that. And the third thing for me will be left tackle. Left tackle will be my third need. I know right after that, I would probably have quarterback and running back right there. I do think that they could use a quarterback to develop. Obviously, that's the desired situation. And I also would say that I think they need a running back. I'm not sold on the group of running backs they have in terms of pure every down runners. But as far as my needs go, I got linebacker, edge, left tackle.
Okay, excellent. Steve, over to you. Your top 3 needs right now.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think linebacker's number one. I mean, we saw this time and again. I mean, the Patriots gave up over 50 yards receiving to running backs, I think, in 7 games last year during the regular season. And then we saw what happened in the Super Bowl with Clement. So, I mean, it just hammers home the point. They need some athleticism back there. Now, I know they were just decimated on the front seven with injuries last year, and we know that. But it doesn't take away the fact that was an issue we saw at training camp when they were all still there. We thought they needed some more, athleticism back there and some speed. That's the number one thing they need to address. They've addressed the edge. Obviously, they're getting Derek Rivers back. They're getting Donta Hightower back. Harvey Lange's coming back. They brought in Claiborne, but I still think they could draft a young guy that can play on the edge. And it doesn't necessarily mean, as people like, they need a pass rusher. It's like, oh my God, I'm so sick of hearing that. It's not their defense, folks.
And it's not a position, by the way.
One trick pony. I see a lot of people clamoring for these guys who can only rush the passer.
Yeah.
And that's not their defense. If a guy can't set the edge in the running game, don't even put your hopes on him. They're not going to draft that guy as a defense, maybe outside linebacker. Yeah, but a one-trick pony at defensive end. We saw what happened to guys like that, Cassius Marsh, Eric Lee. It doesn't work not with the style of defense.
I think that could use guys with. I think they could use people with more pass rush ability. But if you're going to talk about them as just that's the only thing they can do, well then yeah. I mean, they're not going to take a guy like who's the Bruce Irvin. They're not going to take a guy like Bruce Irvin from that. That's just not who can really only do that and nothing else. I mean, they want well-rounded defensive ends, And, that's okay to, it doesn't have to be just Eric Lee and Cassius Marsh. They can get guys with more talent, not just guys off the street. But, we'll see.
Right. But what I'm saying is those guys were very good at rushing the passer, but not so good at setting the edge. And we saw what happens when, because of how they play the game, their style of defense, what happens when you don't have them. And my third need is quarterback. I think you need to address Tom Brady's successor this year. There's a lot of good quarterbacks coming out, and to get this guy in the system and start getting him, seasoned. I mean, he doesn't have to step in this year, unless of an injury or whatever. And I actually, even in the case of an injury, I'd rather they didn't do that. Bring this guy in, let him soak everything up. Because I'm honest, I think the offensive tackle, and I'm sure they'll address it, they have like 6 offensive tackles, and I think for this year, they'll be okay. They won't be great, but they'll be okay.
Okay. Very good there, Steve. All right. Quickly, I'll share my 3. Number 1, you guys are going to know this. It's quarterback. I'm going right for the quarterback. And Derek, if for some reason it's not Lamar Jackson, they target someone else and they go up in the draft, I'm certainly not against that. So
Baker Mayfield, baby.
Okay, listen, who knows? I'm just saying, I think they need to target a quarterback, and I want it to be in the
actually
first
really
round.
just trying to piss you off, but sure, that's fun.
Yeah, well, whatever, Derek. Next, linebacker, I think that's a severe need, and then you guys have already talked about it. I am going to say left tackle, but Steve brought up a good point. They do have options there right now, but I would like to see them draft the next left tackle. We'll see if Garcia can be it, but I think you need to draft another one as well. All right, guys, let's move on. And this is a topic brought to me from Steve Balistrieri, and it's a very good one. So let's talk about this. With the Patriots defense, are the issues more about scheme or the personnel? And you can't pick both, Derek. So which one is it?
Well, to me, this is a great topic, but it's easy to me. It's personnel, and it's not even question. There's no question. But hang on, actually, I'm sorry. Was the question, what is the problem now, or what is most important?
What is most important with the Patriots defense? Are the issues now more about scheme or the personnel?
Oh, the issues now are about personnel because we've seen them win with the scheme. I mean, the scheme they've won with vasting various talents. I mean, but they've all been good players. They just don't have the players right now.
Okay.
To me, it's all about personnel and the issues they have right now because they've won, 5 Super Bowl championships with the same exact scheme. So the answer of the scheme is the issue right now is not acceptable as an answer.
Okay. Steve, over to you. I'm just going to share my thoughts real quick on this. I actually agree with Derek. It always pains me to do that, but I have to agree with him. It is about the personnel. At times, the scheme drives me crazy. I think it's way too conservative. But as Derek mentioned, they have won many times with this scheme. And when it works well, it can be excellent. So for me, it's about finding the personnel to play within the scheme because they're not changing the scheme. It is what it is, to use a Belichick term. Your thoughts on your topic here?
Right. And you guys, because both of you are very smart on this subject. And, it's the personnel. And, it's tough. Because, when you're trying to retool every year and you're picking 31, 32, it's the pickings get slim back there. And we've seen this, year. And they have swung and missed on some of their first round picks that they have taken. But it's a personnel issue. And, when they've faltered in the playoffs, it's usually on years where they're not very healthy. It's tough to retool when you're always picking at the bottom of the rounds. And we've seen this in years where they're banged up is when they seem to come up short. And this year was a prime example of that.
Yep.
They didn't have the depth they needed. And, because of injuries, illness, car accidents, Rob Ninkovich retiring was a little bit of a surprise for them. You go back to that, and that's what they really lacked. A guy like Ninkovich, if he'd come back for one more year, would have really helped some of these young guys on the team. And, I think it's a personnel issue. Yeah, the fans are all clamor for that pin your ears back type of defense.
Well, let's talk about this, Steve.
And that's I'm going to mention this, and I keep hearing, look at Chandler Jones. Look at Chandler Jones.
I was just about to bring him up.
Let's look at Chandler Jones. He had 17 sacks last year.
Stole my thunder.
All right, 17.
Yeah.
All right. Now, what happens on those 1,000 other plays on defense when he doesn't sack the quarterback?
Yeah,
there's your answer.
Because we've been very critical on him. Last year was the best year of him in the pros, but and maybe that scheme works better for him.
It does.
Here he was not worth.
Well, I'm using him because I keep seeing people saying this on social media. It's like, well, if they had kept Chandler Jones, well, their style of defense, their style, whether you like it or not, and like Russ already said, they're keeping this style.
Yeah,
they're keeping this style, and that is they set the edge in the running game first, and then they try to contain the pocket and then pressure the quarterback. You have multiple layers, you have multiple responsibilities if you're an edge guy, and if you falter in the first one, which is setting the edge, it throws everything off, and that is what happened to them all year.
Yep.
Well, it wasn't the secondary; it was teams had 3rd and 3. Well, you can have the best secondary in the world, but if the team only has to throw a quick 3-yard hitch on 3rd down, they're going to keep moving the sticks. Well, but if it's 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9 consistently, then it plays to what your strengths are.
Right.
And it's a personnel issue. And the fans need to realize Bill Belichick isn't going to change. And why should he?
Right.
I mean, they've won at unprecedented levels for 17 years. And nobody's doing that. And
listen, so many former players, Steve, I'm sorry to jump in, have been able to play the read-react defense and be able to set the edge and take on their blocker first. Again, Richard Seymour, just as an example, obviously a different type of position, but he never got the sack numbers because he did what he had to do for the team first. He took on 2 blockers on many occasions. And that was more their type of player. I'm even going to say this, Steven, you might disagree with me. I don't know. I think that James Harrison, believe it or not, was their type of player because he was willing to set the edge and also get after the quarterback. Would you agree with me?
Right. Well, and it comes to a talent issue. That's what we're talking personnel. Right. Now, James Harrison,
even at 39,
playing in this system, we saw he did a very good job of setting the edge, but he could still get after the passer. And that's, those are the type of players that are hard to find when you're picking at the bottom every year.
Right.
Now, Harrison was, obviously an elite player for many years, and he's getting up there. He's going to be like 40 years old this year. But and that goes to the point of, what happened with all these injuries. When your best linebacker is 40 years old in the playoffs, you got some issues back there.
Absolutely. And that became an age issue, but his skill set is what they look for, and that's why Chandler Jones' partial reason happens to be is that he did not do what they needed him to do, and now he's in a scheme that fits his skill set better, so good for him. But Chandler Jones was never going to be the long-term fit for the Patriots just because of the style that he wants to play. He could not set the edge well enough for their liking. It was not going to work, even though he has the numbers, he has all that, not within this scheme. And it goes back to what we're talking about. It really is a personnel issue, finding the players to fit the scheme. They might not be the most talented players in the NFL in defense, but they need to be the most talented to play the scheme. And that's my thoughts on that. All right, guys, we're going to jump to a final topic. I was going to mention Malcolm Butler, but we can do that on a future episode. We're going to end with talking about Rob Gronkowski, and we have to start with Derek's poll. Now, Derek's poll might be a little skewed now because of the Brandin Cooks trade. So let's take that in consideration because he actually tweeted this out about a day ago. And Derek, I have the results in front of me, so I'm going to share them. This was the Twitter poll Derek did. Would you trade Rob Gronkowski if you were the Patriots? Derek had 1,549 votes. That's a good amount of votes. Let's start with the least. Yes, tired of his act. That was at 3%. Let's now go to no, control his rights. That's at 8%. Then we have yes, cash and move on was at 16%. The overall majority at 73%, Derek, was no, too valuable to the team. Okay, Derek. Now, again, like I said, with the trade, I think things have changed. Your thoughts on your poll, and would you trade Rob Gronkowski?
No, I wouldn't trade Rob Gronkowski, but I would listen to the offers because I would think about it. And
Absolutely not. 0.0, Mr. Butowski, 0.0.
If you're going to hold the gun, if you're going to ask me what I'm going to do, I'm going to say no. I don't think you should be in the business of trading Hall of Fame players.
That's right.
And I think he's one of the best to ever play tight end, and he's a great player. Now, there are some issues here now. Now, if you're going to get a really good haul back, if you're going to get a first round pick and a player, or a first round pick and a really high draft pick, you could consider it. But man, I look at what Gronk is able to do, and look for the record. I started the poll because there's been some rumors and discussions about it, and I was kind of trying to just read the pulse of the fan base.
Yep.
And I wish I could have elaborated on my, when you type in like the poll, like the answers, you only have so many characters, so I had to kind of keep it short and sweet. But there are a large majority of fans, or I would say at least, I wouldn't say a majority, but there's a large portion of fans, and I don't know who you guys have talked to, but people that I have talked to over the past few years that have been ready to move on with Gronk, that get sick of his injuries and think he's overpaid, and just they get upset because he misses too much time. And I think that honestly is part of the Patriots' standpoint on his contract. I think this whole retirement talk is brought on him for a couple different reasons. But to me, it's all a leverage play for a contract. He wants his money. He wants more money, and maybe he should be paid more. In fact, if he's healthy, he absolutely should be paid like one of the best offensive weapons in the NFL.
Totally disagree,
but my
Derek.
counter
Totally
to
disagree.
him would be,
I totally disagree with you.
You've been what?
I disagree, Derek, and I'm going to explain why. I'm sorry to jump in. He should not be paid as the best weapon in the game, offensive weapon in the game.
I said one of the best.
Right, but he shouldn't be because he was paid at a top level when he signed the contract. Go back to that. And
I also would say to him, to Gronk, you've been overpaid in the years that you've missed with time. So it balances out. Now, if they just gave him a little bump last year, if they want to give him some more money this year, I won't be mad. Okay. I won't be mad at all. I'll give Gronk all the incentives he wants because to me, a good Gronk means you got a good team. I mean, he will make sure that championship window stays open. He's that dynamic. We've seen what the results of him on and off the field mean for this team. I mean, he basically holds the championship aspirations in his hands with Tom Brady. I mean, they're great together.
Right.
But it just depends on what he wants. And this is one of those things that we don't know behind the scenes. What's going on. I had a couple people get like all irritated with me yesterday because of this poll. And it was based on the fact that essentially, why does everyone keep talking about him retiring, or everything about this story is a media fabrication? I think that's bullshit. It's not, and I'm sorry to cuss because I know we were going to try to cut that out after last week.
Derek.
But it is. It's absolute garbage because who started the speculation? Gronkowski did. This is similar, Russ, to the Malcolm Butler situation.
Okay.
What happens when we don't have answers as a fan base and as a media group? You speculate. You try to find out what we don't understand. And we don't have the answers to Gronkowski. Gronkowski was the one who came up after the Super Bowl and started talking about the possibility of retirement. We would have never even thought about it if he didn't open his mouth there. Drew Rosenhaus has had 2 or 3 chances with the media to clear up or answer if Gronk's coming back. He has no comment. Gronk's the one who signed with the casting agency in Hollywood. So he's apparently going to be in a story or a movie with Mel Gibson. So
Right.
you tell me what the media fabrication is there. This is Gronkowski's. If Gronkowski doesn't, or fans don't like that there's speculation around what his future is, blame Gronk. He is the source of the issue right now. And I wouldn't trade him. I would keep him. You'd have to really, really pry him away from my hands. And that's only if I thought his head wasn't in the game, because we've seen Belichick move on from people who he didn't buy into the program. But I think Gronk is too valuable and he means too much to me.
Right.
But as far as the fabrication goes, that's totally on him.
Okay, it is on him, Derek, but what's not on him is the trade talk. The trade talk is on the media. It's creating the trade talk, which did not
No, it's not.
exist. It didn't
No, it's
exist until Albert Breer went after and found two teams that he had talked to that were interested in trading for Gronk. He's the first person that I had seen that had any speculation that was legitimate in regards to a trade for Gronk. There was nothing else. The media
So why
would they be trading for Gronk?
Why is it stupid to say that they could trade Gronkowski when when Belichick has traded very good players in the past? Belichick has pulled the Band-Aid off guys who he believes either are not buying into the program, or maybe their head isn't in it. I mean, what is the saying is that if you're thinking about retiring, you're already retired. If
Sure.
Gronk really believes that Gronk is at the end of the line, why is it stupid for Belichick to be like, I'm just going to go ahead and cash in and get my best assets and move on? I don't think it's stupid to say it. Now, I don't think it's going to happen. If you ask me if I thought it was going to happen, I'd say absolutely not. But I do think there's a larger percentage than I would have given to the past.
See, my whole thing is Belichick also wouldn't reward a player for doing that, for trying to force his way into what he wanted. And that would be giving him what he wanted. And that, to me, is against what Belichick normally does. He puts the team first. That would be putting Gronkowski first by trading him. It would be putting him first. And that's why I don't see that. And I don't see them giving away a player that changes how they play, and they have no one that can do that. So, again, if I'm Belichick, this is just me, Derek, and then I'm going to go to you, Steve. I don't trade him at all. I put it at 0.0. This is actually an Animal House quote that I was giving you before with Butarski. That's from Animal House, by the way, if you didn't know, Derek. And I give it 0%.
I would say, to me, I would – percentage I would trade him personally would be like close to 1%, because you'd really have to blow me away with an offer.
Okay.
But if you were going to ask me what I thought the percentage in reality was, I would say like 15%. I think there's a chance, and I never would have thought that. I never would have thought that before this offseason, and I think there's a small chance.
Okay, I disagree, but that's what makes our show so good. We don't have to agree. Steve, over to you. I want to get your thoughts on this whole Gronkowski situation, and my initial topic was should the Patriots trade Rob Gronkowski, but since I brought it to Derek's attention in a little bit different way, I said, would you trade Rob Gronkowski? I'll ask you the same thing. Would you?
Well, if you're asking me, would I would be against it, because we've seen how important he is to this offense. I mean, when both him and Julian Edelman are healthy and on the field, this offense is extremely difficult to stop. So my first reaction is absolutely not. However, as Derek pointed out, when guys start talking about retirement, we've seen how Bill Belichick reacts to that, because if you're thinking about retirement and you're not 100% in, and if you're not 100% in, you're 100% out. And so in that case, could they trade him? I think I'm in agreement with Derek. I think there's a chance, not a huge chance, especially now that they've traded Cooks away. I don't think they're going to blow up the offense that much all at once. So
Right.
I would think that the chances went down a little bit. But yeah, I think there's still a chance that they could trade him. And I'll give you a couple other reasons why. And that is, one, we've heard rumors that Bill Belichick isn't happy with some of Gronkowski's comments through social media, which seem to have taken a shot at him.
Yep.
And that won't play well with the coach. And two is he started putting caveats on things, according to some people that were close to his agent. Well, he's all in as long as Tom Brady's in.
Yeah, I heard that.
What kind of, stuff is that? If you're going to start putting caveats on things, then I'm for trading him.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry. I mean, I want somebody that wants to be here 24/7, 365 days a year. Not as well as if this guy leaves, then I'm out. No.
Right,
sorry.
Steve. And I understand where you're going on this. This is where you and I disagree. Then my point to Gronkowski would be, if you're not all in, then you retire. You either got to play with us or you retire. I'm not trading you. You're either all in or not.
Yeah,
that's what I would.
And I agree with that.
I would not let him dictate to me his contract situation, meaning to dictate how this is all going to play out. The Patriots.
Well, and I understand. He wants to. He's seen what some of these lesser tight ends are getting on the market.
He still signed a deal.
And absolutely. And the one thing you have to remember is at the time that he signed that, there was a lot of speculation that the Patriots were really taking a risk.
Yep.
If you remember. They gave him like a 6-year, $54 million deal because he wanted that.
He wanted the security.
Wanted that security.
Yes.
That was going to be there. And I remember the Patriots took a lot of heat over that. Of course, a lot of the people that are fanning the Flames forget that.
Yep.
Because they were like, oh, this is a big risk for a guy who's had so many surgeries on his arm, his back, his knee. They gave him that big deal. And, he's obviously outplayed that deal. And now guys who are a lot less talented than him are making more money. I don't fault him at all for wanting to get paid at least what they're getting paid. Of course not. I don't fault him for that at all. In fact, he should get paid because he's much better than all of them.
Right.
I think he's the best tight end in football. So I don't even think
the problem with the Gronkowski thing, to me, guys, is both sides are right. I mean, that's the issue. I think that with Gronk, like Steve said, he should go ahead and throw his stats on the table. Look at your offense with me. Look at it without me. Look at the production I have and what I can bring to the table. And the Patriots can turn around and say, okay, you're paid well. We just bumped you up last year. You've missed a lot of time with injuries. It's fair. And Gronk goes, look, you're telling me I should be paid as much as Kobe Fleener? I'm like, well, yeah. You can argue both sides.
Yeah, you can.
And I think that's what makes it a difficult situation. And I think it's frustrating for people because you would just think in a perfect world everything just gets along, perfectly. And I don't. It's not like the thing with some like talk shows is and some media, they want to make it like it's a personal vendetta every single time. And I'm sure that sometimes there is personal issues involved.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, it's a business. You have to negotiate it. You have to think about it from a business standpoint.
I hear Derek. Very, very interesting way to end the show talking about Gronkowski. I understand where both of you guys are coming from on this. I don't see any way that they trade him, but you guys make good arguments for yourselves. I'm again going to put it on 0%, and you guys have a little higher than that.
I'm not saying you would. I'm saying you don't. Do you even think there's a chance that they would consider?
No, I don't. But again, I'm the guy who thought they wouldn't trade Brandin Cooks. So what the hell do I know?
I mean, just remember, there's always a team out there that might throw something at you that's totally ridiculous.
Yeah.
Herschel Walker.
That's a good point. That's a good point, Steve. We'll have to see. I don't think so, but I'm still going to put it at 0, and I'm not going to change my mind on it. And obviously, you guys have your thoughts on it as well. All right, guys, fantastic show. This was a great show. We kept Derek to just one swear, thankfully. That was very good, Derek. Thank you.
I owe you both $5 to the Patriots 4th and 2 swear jar. I'll Venmo that to you now.
Okay, thank you.
I bit my tongue twice. I almost swore twice.
Great show, guys. I just want to mention before we go, I'll say it one more time, please do check out Patriots 4th and 2 on the PatsFans.com YouTube channel. We're going to be posting the show there. Ian Logue has done an excellent job of putting together some visuals to go along with the show, and I think you're going to like it. please do get a chance, check it out, and you might like it and subscribe to the PatsFans.com YouTube channel because we're going to be doing videos as well for this upcoming season, like I mentioned. Okay, great show, but it is time to go. For Steve Balestrieri and Derek Havens, I'm Russ Goldman. Thank you as always for listening to Patriots 4th and 2, the official podcast of PatsFans.com. Fans.com. Fans.com. Fans.com.